I didn't say it was necessarily true.
This is Osman Siddiqi.
Obviously,
He is the man behind this now famous photograph that went viral during the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya. It shows one of the country's most iconic landmarks, Africa's second highest mountain, Mount Kenya. But this was not the first time Osman had spotted Mount Kenya from this exact spot.
and just from the balcony, we have a really nice view. We're quite lucky to have a place like this. And it was certain mornings we just wake up and like, oh, what is that? 3 peaks. That looks interesting. Oh wait, that's Mount Kenya, right? And it surprised us a lot back in the day because I never had that impression that Nairobi and Mount Kenya could somehow be related in the same photo or the same image or the same narrative.
What made this sighting special is that on this specific day, the view was just so much clearer. Intrigued, Osman grabbed his camera and captured this moment overlooking the One Africa building in Westlands. This was March 29th at 9:43 a.m.
I think it was the WhatsApp fire that really took it off. But then, the next morning, there's this dude, Ibrahim Johnny, on Twitter who had posted it and tagged it with that now infamous Nairobi is breathing statement. And he'd managed to get a lot of traction onto the photo.
What followed on social media were claims that the photo had been photoshopped, sparking a myriad of memes on how the earth is breathing. People who grew up in the city observed that this was a normal occurrence in the 80s and 90s. Osman and many other social media users wondered if social distancing and curfews had led to a reduction in air pollution, in turn making Mount Kenya clearly visible from Nairobi.
There's also rain, there's other things that reduce pollution in the air at a particular point in time. But what did surprise me was this was in the first 5 or 6 months I was living here, I hadn't seen the photo as clearly. It's the only time I took out my DSLR to take the photo.
So, did air pollution really reduce during the pandemic? Sensors Africa, a Pan-African science initiative that uses low-cost air quality sensors, has been monitoring air quality in Nairobi even before COVID-19. Their most recent data shows an interesting trend. On the week after the first coronavirus case was confirmed in Kenya, air pollution levels went down significantly. The daily averages of PM2.5, which ranged from 10 to 20 micrograms per cubic meter since January, went down to lows of 6. Particulate matter 2.5 is fine particles measuring 2.5 micrometers or less in diameter. It is often compared with human hair, which is about 100 micrometers, so roughly 40 fine particles could be placed on its width. The World Health Organization recommends that levels of PM2.5 should not exceed 10 micrograms per cubic meter annually. For every day, that number should not go past 25 micrograms per cubic meter. Outdoor air pollution is responsible for an estimated 4.2 million premature deaths worldwide every year. Experts say exposure to high levels of PM2.5 causes cancers and also contributes to heart and lung diseases. Many times, these particles cause the air to appear hazy and might interfere with visibility. So this could be the reason why landmarks like Mount Kenya are not usually visible from the city. One theory is that as traffic reduced during the pandemic, visibility also improved.
Is there any scientific proof that less air pollution now is the reason why we can see these landmarks more visibly?
The science behind it is that I see you because the light, or I see a building because the light which falls on that building is reflected to my eyes. So if somebody becomes in between, that reflected light does not come. That's the kind of thinking you should have. Okay. So these small particles obviously are able to block the light. So the light which arrives at your eyes is less. So the visibility, but then what is happening is that you see there is a lot of rain going on. Rain is a very good cleaner of the atmosphere. So when there is no rain, it has just stopped. It has screened the atmosphere from many particles.
Near Ngong Road, one of the most polluted areas in the city is Jamhuri Estate. Pollution levels in the area would normally go up during traffic peak hours. Often after midnight, the levels could go as high as 60 micrograms per cubic meter. When movement restrictions and the night curfew were announced, the levels remained largely the same. But 1 week into the night curfew, the levels started going down. In Lolongo and Athi River, the sensors show no significant change in air quality during COVID-19 lockdown. We captured these images in early May. Early in the morning and late in the evening, we could see emissions from factories in Kitengela. Some emissions were so significant, we could see them from the Nairobi National Park.
You'll be very surprised that our industries are not as much. If you compare with our road system and the congestion, the emissions are much more from the road. Obviously, the mobility is also impaired now, and idle, and I think people just driving idly around are reduced. So there must be a reduction.
Google released a report in April 2020 showing how people's movement changed during the first few weeks of the pandemic. While movement to workplaces decreased significantly, the report shows that movement around residential areas went up by 22%. So, even though Nairobi CBD may have had lower emissions from vehicles, it made little difference to the overall quality of air.
If the vehicles are reduced, definitely there will be a reduction. And when it normalizes, the air pollution will be higher. That should be well seen, the proper measurements.
In some parts of the world, pollution levels went down significantly during lockdowns. According to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, the national average levels of PM2.5 fell by 33% in China during the national lockdown in February. However, with the country's recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, the pollution levels have gone up and have exceeded concentrations at the same time last year. Similarly, the skies cleared up in Indian towns and other cities across the globe such as Venice and Paris as car emissions, among other air pollutants, had gone down during the lockdown. We may never know whether better air quality was the perfect ingredient for Osman Siddiqi's masterpiece, but it has surely got us all talking about what the city could look like with less air pollution.
One question that has been on top of mind, and we've discussed it a little bit, is like, what do we do with this data once it comes out? Because great, we've got these measures and you've got more salience and visibility on what pollution levels are. How does that inform an individual or a household to make decisions differently?
3 weeks after he shot the morning view of Mount Kenya, Osman was lucky to capture it again on a cloudy evening.
If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our limited podcast series After Rona with Patrick Gatwa